What's up, everybody? Welcome to Believe in White Sox here on a Thursday. The San Francisco Giants will be coming into town tomorrow. It has been a while since we have done a show, so I wanted to come on here and do a show as the White Sox sit at 26-55. I was positive, very positive after the last show that we did, but I'm just not as confident right now in the White Sox as I once was, and I think that a lot of this has to do with the fact that a young team struggles when it gets to June, and they have to figure out ways to pull themselves up by their bootstraps when you get to June. And I think that the White Sox are such a young team that it's hard necessarily to put together full performances night in and night out. In the month of June, the White Sox are hitting just .219 as a club. That's the lowest batting average of any team in the month of June. By the way, second lowest is the Cleveland Guardians at .221, and the Guardians have been a big disappointment throughout the year. The White Sox are third, or rather, believe it or not, fifth worst in the month of June in runs per game at 3.52, but amazingly, and not that they've played a ton against the division in the last couple of weeks. In fact, they're in a stretch where they're basically only going to play the NL West, which is remarkable. They had their series against the Cardinals, then the series at the Blue Jays, which they won, 2-1 up in Toronto. Then Diamondbacks losing 2 of 3. I was at Rate Field on Tuesday night, and the last 2 White Sox games I've gone to, they've been outscored by the total of 20-2, both of them being Shane Smith starts, and he's one of the guys right now that just simply looks like he's wearing down. His command is not nearly as good. He's getting hit around a little bit, and I think that's to be expected for a guy that at the professional level has never thrown over 100 innings at any level of professional baseball. So I get that to an extent. And then the White Sox will go to the West Coast, they'll play the Dodgers, and they'll play the Rockies, and maybe the Rockies are a team that they can find a way to get a few wins against. But, you know, this White Sox team, there are things that are encouraging still about the way that they're playing, but at the end of the day, in the month of June, they're suffering way too many injuries, and the young guys are proving that they are not necessarily as ready for prime time as we would have hoped. In the month of June, Kyle Teel, this is his entire big league career to this point, but Kyle Teel has been phenomenal, but no power. In 49 at-bats, or 39 at-bats, 49 plate appearances, he's hitting .282 with a .408 on base. No homers, 2 runs batted in, 3 extra base hits, all doubles. Edgar Caro is hitting .278 in the month of June, but his on-base is only .298, so he's not walking. He only has 2 walks in 57 plate appearances. He's scored just 1 run, and he doesn't have a homer. The rest of the White Sox are struggling to an extent. Chase Meidroth is hitting .250 in the month of June, but of late, he is taking more first pitches than he should, and I love guys with a patient approach, but Chase Meidroth, because he's so patient, is falling behind in counts. And because he's falling behind in counts, he has to dig himself out of holes where he has to swing at pitches he necessarily doesn't want to, 0-2 and 1-2. You know, the other night against the Diamondbacks, I saw him take 3 straight pitches in his first at-bat. Took a borderline strike, but it was probably a strike. Takes another pitch on the corner, and then figures it's a chase pitch on an 0-2. He ends up taking another strike, and that's that. But I think the other thing about this White Sox team right now is that they're too much a combination of guys that are going nowhere and guys that aren't necessarily ready to be everyday studs. The White Sox are doing their best to make them everyday studs, and you're seeing some combination of Chase Meidroth, Kyle Teel, and Edgar Caro in the lineup every day, which is good. But at the same time, say what you want about the struggles of Tim Elko. And Tim Elko clearly proved that he had a lot more work to do before he was a big league ready first baseman. I'd rather see Tim Elko play first base than see any of Ryan Noda. Brooks Baldwin is having a terrific month of June down in AAA Charlotte. I think Brooks Baldwin, I'm going to look it up right now, I think Brooks Baldwin is hitting over 350 in the month of June at AAA Charlotte. I hate how bad the minor league baseball website has become. When I was working in minor league baseball, it used to be really, really good. Now it's not so good. So in the month of June, he's hitting 377 with 8 homers and 15 runs batted in, with an on-base of 456 in AAA. Why not have him in the big leagues? Why not have him play one of the outfield positions? What good does it do you at this point to have him continue to mash in Charlotte and yet roll Austin Slater out every day, who can't hit right-handed pitching to save his life? Or roll Michael A. Taylor out when you could have somebody that is a little bit better in terms of contact percentage. Now, I don't know the exact contact rates for Baldwin compared to Taylor. I'm not going to look it up right now. I don't have that kind of time. Or rather, I do. But one of the reasons we're doing an audio-only podcast today is because I was just too damn lazy to set up the camera and turn the lights on. And also, I just got done working out of the gym, and I wanted to just turn on the microphone and get this done quickly. Because we haven't done anything for a while. I'm going back to California in a few weeks, or actually in less than a week, and we're not really going to have time to record out there. Full disclosure, my dad has always hated whenever I've recorded a podcast in his presence. He always like, "What are you doing in there?" And, people of my dad's generation don't necessarily understand podcasting. Or rather, maybe they do, but he's 67 going on 97 at times. At other times, he's 67 going on 17. But that's only in certain aspects of life. But again, it's not to be critical of people of my dad's generation. It's just sometimes it's the way things are. I think, though, that the biggest problem that this White Sox team has started to face is that they're so injured pitching-wise that they haven't necessarily been able to plan out how they want to develop their starting staff the way that they've wanted to, and they felt like maybe they have to play more veterans than they want to because of the fact that they're just piecing it together right now. Grant Taylor has been a very, very nice addition to the bullpen. The one thing, though, with Grant Taylor is that I think a lot of White Sox fans want to see him as a starter. Our last episode, we told you, if the path for him is reliever, that's fine. But right now, you only have, of the guys that were in your opening day rotation, of the starters that began the year, your starting rotation to begin the year was Sean Burke, Davis Martin, Jonathan Cannon, Martin Perez, and Shane Smith. Of those 5 guys, only 2 of them are on the active roster right now. Martin's on the 15-day IL, Cannon's on the 15-day IL, and Perez is done for the year and needs Tommy John surgery. Shane Smith, the last couple of starts, has looked really tired. And I know we mentioned that a little bit earlier in the show, but his ERA has gone up to 3.38. He has not necessarily been served great defense behind him, but his last couple of starts, he has gone just 6 1/3 innings combined and allowed 10 earned runs. I went to his start against the Diamondbacks on Tuesday, and his command was awful. He only walked 2 guys, but he hit a batter. He gave up 5 earned runs on 4 hits, including a homer, and lasted 64 pitches in 2 innings. He didn't come out for the 3rd. Against the Cardinals, he gave up 6 runs, 5 earned. 5 of those came in the 2nd inning that night. I was at that game as well. So maybe it's just a couple start rough streak for him. But, this is a guy they're not letting go into the 100 pitches range, but his pitch count's been elevated the last couple of starts. 87 pitches for 4 1/3 against the Cardinals, and then 64 pitches for, I think he was over 30 in the 1st inning on Tuesday night against Arizona. Sean Burke has been fine. A 4.22 ERA in 14 starts, 16 total appearances. And that's what Sean Burke is. He's fine. He's a 4 or a 5 starter. Against the Diamondbacks, he allowed 2 unearned runs in 5 innings. Good. 83 pitches, not nearly that efficient. Against the Cardinals, 2 runs, 1 earned in 5 1/3, 100 pitches. Start before that against the Astros, he was terrible. So he's been really up and down. That's why the White Sox have the Adrian Hausers and the Aaron Savalis of the world to eat some innings. And you got another piece of the Garrett Crochet trade up in the big leagues now and I got to be able to spell his name correctly, in Wickelman Gonzalez. And Wickelman Gonzalez has got some really good stuff. And I'm excited to see what he can be out of the White Sox bullpen at this point because it's such a hodgepodge of guys, and it's the type of bullpen that, and even the guys that you trusted in high leverage situations are hurt. You know, the Cam Boozers of the world are struggling, and now he's hurt. You have no future in people like Dan Altavilla and Tyler Alexander, who are over 30 years of age and were signed off the street. Brandon Eisert is fine. Tyler Gilbert is also an older guy. You know, but you have somebody like a Wickelman Gonzalez who is only 23 years old. So you want to see a guy like that pitch more. It's encouraging that the White Sox have been as good as they have been at the AAA level. It's not translating to the bigs because there is, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, there's a difference, I think, between, it's not technically a level, but I call it quadruple A. Quadruple A is not a level. It doesn't exist. But what it is a mindset. It's a development stage. Quadruple A player is a player that's too good for Triple A, but isn't good enough for the big leagues at this point. Tim Elko is a quadruple A player. Brooks Baldwin, I think, is a big league player. But right now, the White Sox are putting him in as a quadruple A player. Colson Montgomery is barely at this point a triple A player because he's struggling as much as he is. Now, Jonathan Cannon is on rehab right now with AAA Charlotte, and hopefully he will be back soon. His rehab assignment for the Knights the other night, June 24th against Toledo, 3 innings, 2 strikeouts, 1 walk. They don't have the pitch count here? What are we doing, minor league baseball? Come on. Not a fan of that. But Jonathan Cannon will be back soon. But I think also the White Sox, you have to figure out what your plan is starting pitching-wise to just make sure that your young guys aren't overused toward the end of the year. And I think that you're getting to the point of the year developmentally where you have to be mindful of some of these guys' futures. You have to mitigate the amount of innings that are being thrown by some of the guys that you hope are going to be a part of your rotation for the next couple of years. That's where I go to the Shane Smiths of the world, where a Rule 5 pick that hasn't had nearly the type of developmental arc, he's been really fast-tracked because of how good he's been. I think that it's problematic at times that, Shane Smith, he's probably going to be the White Sox All-Star still, despite the struggles of the last 2 starts. Miguel Vargas may end up being the White Sox All-Star, but, there's a reason why you had to go out and get veterans like Adrian Hauser and why you bit the bullet of punting on Andrew Vaughn to get somebody in Aaron Savali who can eat innings. And now with the White Sox signing Noah Syndergaard, maybe there's a possibility that he can work his way back up into the bullpen and take some innings off the bullpen, and then maybe a Tyler Alexander gets stretched out into a starter. Now, I heard on the radio the other day, Len Casper and Darren Jackson were saying that they believe that Mike Vassell is stretched out to the point to where he could end up being a starter. And I hate going down this road because this road sucks, but Mike Clevenger is in AAA right now, and he's got an ERA of 4.01. So maybe he comes back into the rotation just to eat innings. As much as I hate that, and most White Sox fans would hate that, he's in your organization. For whatever reason, you refuse to quit him. Maybe give him an opportunity to just eat some innings. I think the point for a lot of July and August is going to be trying to save the innings of guys that you think are going to be a part of your rotation for years to come. And I think Shane Smith is one of those guys. I think Sean Burke is going to end up being somebody that will be in your rotation until he's not good enough to be in your rotation, because his stuff isn't special. He's serviceable. I think he's been better than what people expected him to be. But then there are other people that say, well, there's a reason why this guy's the number one starter. I don't think the White Sox knew how good Shane Smith was going to be. And I think if you had to start it over again, I think Shane Smith would end up being your number one starter. You know, Davis Martin, when he's been really good, has been probably their second best pitcher. Jonathan Cannon, when he's been really good, has had really good stuff, but his command issues will continue to plague him, and he's not fully healthy right now. So I think managing that is going to be a big part of what the White Sox do. And the lineup, they've had their struggles, but again, you know, this is a team that went on a long losing streak prior to going up to Toronto and taking 2 of 3. You know, they got swept by the Cardinals. They got swept by the Rangers. They took 1 of 3 from the Diamondbacks after scoring just 1 run over the course of the first 2 games. And simply put, like, you can have some journeyman veterans in your lineup, but you can't have, in my opinion, you can't have a lineup full of Austin Slaters and Michael A. Taylors and Vinny Capra. Again, if you're going to keep Brooks Baldwin in AAA after he spent most of the last 2 months of last season in the big leagues, and he's hitting .355 in the month of June in AAA, then why in the hell are you continuing to play a guy that's barely hitting over 100? You know, I understood why they signed Josh Rojas, but Josh Rojas, his best days are behind him, which is unfortunate for somebody that only made his big league debut in 2019. Josh Rojas is hitting .183 over the course of 43 games. .183 with a .261 on base. And this is after last year hitting .225 with 8 home runs for the Mariners in 143 games. So he was an everyday player last year, was not good, comes to the White Sox, not healthy to start the year, but since becoming a quasi-everyday player, is even worse. His career is going in the wrong direction. 2022, he hit .269. 2023, he hit .245. Last year, .225. This year, .183. Let the young guys play in the infield, and maybe you bring Tim Elko back, and you finally get to see more of Miguel Vargas at third instead of first, and you see more of Lenin Sosa at second instead of first as well. There are times to have journeyman fillers in your organization. It's not when you're a team that journeymen are not going to end up helping win. There's no purpose for these guys being here. And not only that, they're not even good. It's not like it's a journeyman hitting .250 over the course of 2 months. It's a journeyman in Vinny Capra who's barely hitting over 100. And he was lucky to be at that. Like 2 weeks ago when I was at Sox Royals, he was hitting like .075. And he still has a spot in the big leagues. Drives me crazy. So this last segment, which is not going to be very long, I want to just touch on what happened at Rate Field on Tuesday night very, very briefly because calling it disgusting is an understatement. And what I think of Gen Z baseball fans is very low. Gen Z baseball fans, you mostly see them as Cub fans. And there are a lot of great Cub fans out there. But there's also a lot of Gen Z Cub fans that don't know anything about the game of baseball and feel like because they bought a ticket that they can say whatever the F they want. Now, I'm not going to claim that this guy was a White Sox fan because if you're a fan of the game of baseball and you have respect for what Major League Baseball players do and the path that some of these guys have taken to get to where they are, you'd have enough respect to not ever bring somebody's personal life into it. What happened with Ketel Marte was so nasty that it is good that that fan got banned for life from all Major League Baseball parks. You know what? You're 22 years old. You feel like you can say anything you want? No, you can't. No, you can't. And when you bring somebody's personal life into it, when you, and I didn't know Ketel Marte, but I know people that did know Ketel Marte. He played for the Clinton Lumber Kings, which is the first minor league team that I worked for when he was in the Mariners organization. Ketel Marte's story is remarkable. And the fact that somebody would say what they did about his mother, and more than likely, this guy had no idea the backstory surrounding his mother passing away in a car crash in 2017. But those are things you just can't say. Those are things that smart baseball people and dignified baseball fans don't say. And I saw the video of the group of fans that he was around, and it was your typical Gen Z crowd. It just was. It just was. Like, I don't want to get myself in trouble with any of this, but look, my generation is maybe the last generation of sports fans, and I would even say that it ended well before me. And I may just be of a different generation. You know, my dad always taught me, and it's the second time I brought up my dad on this podcast. Shout out to you, Dad, if you're listening, but you hate podcasts, so of course you're not. You know, to me, it boggles my mind that people don't have the perspective on how hard it works to get there, and that you have no right to say anything unless you've ever been in somebody else's shoes. And the majority, over 99.9% of sports fans out there can never claim to have done anything that any of these athletes have ever done in their athletic careers. And the fact that Torey Lovello, the Diamondbacks manager, went after the fan the way that he did, good for him. Good for him for standing up for his player. That was 1,000% the right thing to do. And good on the White Sox for making it right on Wednesday afternoon with the video board message and the gesture they made toward Ketel Marte. That should never happen in a baseball park again. And we've seen it in parks across Major League Baseball and across sports. Just because you buy a ticket does not give you the right to do whatever you want. This generation of sports fan, the generation of sports fan below me, if you can even claim that they're actually sports fans, has the wrong idea of what it means to go to a game. You go to a game to root for your team, to actually watch the game. I cannot stand when I go to games with people who don't watch the game. And it happens more often than it doesn't. And it drives me crazy. And it makes me not want to be around these people. That's about as much of a rant as I think I can get on a day like today. I'm more upset about this than I am about the fact that the White Sox are 26-55. Be better, people. Be better.